And then there were four. The Bengals and Chiefs will battle it out at Arrowhead for the right to represent the AFC in Super Bowl 56. For Cincy, they entered the season with 150-1 odds to win it all, with a projected win total of just 6.5 games. But it's been all about defying the odds all season long for the Bengals. Joe Burrow made a miraculous recovery from that torn ACL and looks like he'll be one of the faces of the franchise and the league for the next decade or more. His stellar play led Cincy to their first AFC North title since the 2015 season. And after closing out 2 games late to start the playoffs, the Bengals now find themselves on the doorstep of reaching their first Super Bowl in 33 years. But internally, this is something they expected all along.
I'm tired of the underdog narrative. We're a really, really good team. We're here to make noise.
On the other side, it looked like the Chiefs' season was on life support against the Bills in the divisional round, down 3 with just 13 seconds to go. But 2 people that never lost faith, Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid.
And when it's grim, be the Grim Reaper and go get it. So he did that.
After pulling off the win in overtime in an instant playoff classic, the Chiefs are now 1 win away from reaching their 3rd consecutive Super Bowl. Will Mahomes have another magical performance in front of one of the most raucous crowds in the NFL? Or can Joey Franchise keep transforming a franchise that is still searching for its first Lombardi? We're going to find out Sunday on CBS.
We welcome in 2 of our NFL experts, Danny Kanell and 2-time Super Bowl champ Bryant McFadden, to break this game down. Guys, either the Chiefs are making it back to the Super Bowl, or there's going to be some new blood with the Cincinnati Bengals playing for the Lombardi Trophy there in L.A. Danny, what's a top matchup you're watching for when this game kicks off on CBS at 3 Eastern?
Sherry, last week against the Titans, I had the Cincinnati offensive line versus the defensive front of the Tennessee Titans. And after giving up 9 sacks, I saw clearly that one lost. And I think the offensive line is a big part, but I'm just going to assume the offensive line is going to lose that matchup. So I'm going to look for a different one. And I think it's the weapons that Joe Burrow has, the Cincinnati wide receivers versus the Chiefs secondary with, Tyrann Mathieu concussion protocol back. I think this is critical. I think he's going to get sacked, but he also gets the ball out of his hands. Joe Burrow does. And whether it's Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, or Uzomah, these guys got to make tackles. I think Joe Burrow gets rid of the ball quickly. He knows he's going to get pressured. He knows he's going to get blitzed, and he finds ways to get the ball in their hands. So it's not only, I think they're going to get catches. I think it's important in pass defense, but also just tackling. They cannot let the Cincinnati Bengals receivers get yards after the catch. So that, for me, Joe Burrow's weapons, his wide receiving core versus this Chiefs secondary, that to me is the biggest matchup in the game.
Yeah, I'm right in the same area with Danny, but I would like to highlight one individual player, Jamar Chase. That's the matchup that I'm watching in this ball game, because as a former defender, anytime you surrender 266 yards to one wide receiver and you have an opportunity to play against that player again, you're trying to efface him out of the ball game. You're trying to take him away from Joe Burrow. And that has to be the mindset for Kansas City, because when Jamar Chase is at his best, the Cincinnati Bengals offense, they're at their best. Joe Burrow is at his best. Look at those video game-like numbers. Just throwing the football to Jamar Chase alone, if Joe Burrow did not target or complete any passes to any other wide receiver, he would have surpassed Pat Mahomes' throwing total in the first meeting just targeting Jamar Chase. So that's the matchup, because he is the best wide receiver the Cincinnati Bengals have. He's the most explosive playmaker they have. And if the Kansas City Chiefs can have success against Jamar Chase, it's safe to say they will have success against the other pass catchers and the quarterback in Joe Burrow. That's the matchup, because when you, like I said, allowing 266 yards to one man in one ball game, and you play against that player again, He got to throw it to somebody else. He can't beat us, not again.
Yeah, Jamar Chase, 3 touchdowns last time they played Kansas City, but this time, KC, they're going to have that home field advantage, right? And the experience on their side compared to Cincy. B-Mac, the Chiefs are a 7-point favorite, over under 54.5. How are you wagering in this AFC title game?
I'm going with the home team. I'm riding with the Kansas City Chiefs, and here's why. Let's just look at the quarterback play for Pat Mahomes, playing at home in the playoffs. In 8 playoff games there in Arrowhead Stadium, he is 7-1. The only loss coming to Tom Brady and the New England Patriots in that overtime loss. But outside of that, when you look at his numbers, he has been balling. His offenses in those ball games, they're averaging 36 points per ball game. He has a total of 27 touchdowns in those matchups at home. 23 throwing, 4 on the ground. And then when you look at in totality what the Chiefs have been able to do at home in their last 6 ball games, including last week's playoff game against the Buffalo Bills, they're 6-0 ATS in their last 6 home games. They've done a great job covering, especially getting into the postseason. And yes, they went into overtime against the Buffalo Bills. But remember, that Travis Kelce game-winning touchdown led them to cover. I love backdoor covers. I love front door covers. At the end of the day, I just want to cover. And I believe the Chiefs will cover. And oh, by the way, one last nugget for you guys. When you look at these 2 teams, right, the last 7 meetings between the Chiefs and the Cincinnati Bengals, the home team is 5-2 ATS. Bundle all of that up into the equation, and voila, I'm taking the Chiefs.
I don't like when we're on other opposite sides, me and my Seminole brother here, B-Mac, but we are on this one. He came prepared with some numbers. And this is where to be honest with you, Sherry and B-Mac, I don't love this game in general. I think this one's a really tough one to handicap. The number's big. When it was at 7.5, I like the Bengals even more, but now it's at 7 where it sits. I'm still going to take the Bengals here as a dog. They've not only covered, but they've won both their first playoff games here. But also on the season, they've been spectacular against the spread. 12-7, but more specifically, 7-2 on the road against the spread. This team's playing with a tremendous amount of confidence. They fuel off their quarterback in Joe Burrow. They're kind of playing with house money right now. And I'm a little bit worried about the Chiefs. Where are they mentally after having that game, which was so taxing, so emotional, so up and down? Felt like, oh man, this was our biggest moment of the season. Here we go to the Super Bowl, except they have one more test that everybody thinks they're going to get past in the Cincinnati Bengals. I think they still win the game, the Chiefs. But I think the Bengals are ripe here for maybe a backdoor cover type situation, knocking in that backdoor late in the game, maybe a late Joe Burrow touchdown pass to one of those weapons. So I'll take the Bengals in the touchdown in this one.
And the Bengals, they're going to have their hands full as KC. You guys mentioned it, stacked on both sides of the ball. Danny, what's a Kansas City player prop that's catching your eye?
So this one for me is about Patrick Mahomes. When I look at Patrick Mahomes, I see, one of the more athletic quarterbacks, but in the regular season, I think he's more prone to getting out of bounds, protecting himself, maybe taking a sack. But at this point in the season, this is where you get those extra yards. And his rushing total is at 29.5, which I think is extremely low. Last week, he had 1 rush in that game that went over that number. He's, had 6 runs of 20 yards plus or more on the season. I just think this is the type of game where you do whatever it takes. And Cincinnati's pass rush could pressure him, but he can escape. He can get out. You've also got the threat of design quarterback runs when it gets down there in the red zone. I think this is one of my favorite plays for this game. It's the Patrick Mahomes over 29.5 rush yards.
Well, my favorite prop for the Chiefs is Travis Kelce. I love Travis Kelce going over his reception total, which is 6.5. And the reason why I'm taking the over when it comes to that particular player prop with Kelce is because he is a target getter for Pat Mahomes. When you're playing against Pat Mahomes, the first guy you need to highlight is Tyreek Hill. You can't allow Tyreek Hill, especially seeing what he did last week against the Buffalo Bills, to get behind the coverage. That will open up opportunities for Travis Kelce, even though he sees a lot of attention. He is a in-between-the-20 nightmare. In between the 20s, he does a lot of damage, not to mention what he can provide in the red zone element as well. So seeing this number right here, player prop, receptions 6.5, I easily see at least 8 and maybe 9 receptions for Travis Kelce, because he will get a lot of opportunities, more so than the other pass catchers for the Kansas City Chiefs.
All right, let's talk about Joe Burrow in the boys. B-Mac, what's a top Cincinnati player prop that's jumping out to you?
Well, I know today is Sunday and the bank is not open, but the ATM is. And with that being said, Jamar Chase. I'm going with Jamar Chase. Receiving yards over 85.5. Listen, he gave them 266 the first meeting. I don't expect to see 266, especially with me having the Chiefs to cover the spread, but I easily see 90 to 100 yards. And the reason why I believe he will surpass his player prop in receiving yards, he is a big-time playmaker. We saw what he did last week against Tennessee. He caught a quick smoke pass, ended up turning that into like 40 to 50 yards because he's an explosive guy and he's very, very slippery. He's hard to tackle. So it's not about the opportunities that he needs to have to be able to surpass this. It's about just getting a few opportunities because he can make people miss, and he's a great runner when he has the football in his hand. So that's the player prop that I'm highlighting, and I'm going with Jamar Chase over 85.5 receiving yards.
I like it because that means the offensive production is going to come away from my player that I've got a prop on. It's Joe Mixon, the running back. I mean, we mentioned the 9 sacks. That's all we've heard all week long, the 9 sacks that were surrendered by Cincinnati's offensive line. What is kind of overlooked is how bad they are run blocking as well. They're not a very good offensive line, either protecting Burrow or trying to run the football. And I think more than anything, Cincinnati's realized, and they said, you know what, we'll sprinkle in some runs here and there to keep the defense honest, but that's not where we're going to win games. It's going to be on Joe Burrow's shoulders and this wide receiving core. So Joe Mixon's rushing total is at 57.5, and I'm going to go under that one. He hasn't done it in 4 games in a row. The 2 playoff appearances been 54 and 48. And even before that, the last 2 games before that, he was at 58 yards. So barely above it at just a half yard. I think they'll bail on the run game and they'll try to win this thing through on the strength of Joe Burrow's arm. I think Joe Mixon might get some touches other ways, screen, getting the ball in his hands, but not on the ground. So I'll take the under 57.5 yards rushing for Joe Mixon.
It's going to be a good one. Danny Kanell and Bryant McFadden previewing the AFC Championship game. Thanks for the time, guys. And let's get you a recap of their picks here. Danny Kanell taking the Bengals under. His player prop for the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes, over 29.5 rushing yards. For the Bengals, Joe Mixon under 57.5 rushing yards. As for B-Mac, he's taking the Chiefs -7 player prop for KC. Travis Kelce over 6.5 receptions. For Cincy, Jamar Chase over 85.5 receiving yards. And I know where I'm going to be later, home, glued to CBS this afternoon, watching the AFC Championship game. All the action coming your way today on CBS and streaming on Paramount+. Kickoff for the AFC title game set for 3 Eastern with the best in the biz, Jim Nance, Tony Romo, and Tracy Wolfson on the call. Also, join us right here on HQ pregame from 1 to 3.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.